All right, what's going on, boys and girls? Sorry for the picture-in-picture here. Okay, so I recently got a comment from a user on my YouTube account that I found interesting, that I kind of wanted to do as quick a video as I possibly could. Now, I'm not going to go into like all the nitty-gritty detail, so I'm just going to try to answer his questions the best I can. Now, this is a one-shot. This is not anything that I'm going to overtly edit or anything, so take it for what it is. So the quality ain't gonna be great. So let's just read his question from BigPappaYo. Really enjoyed this video on the one on Steam games under $5. Total noob to any kind of gaming, but you have piqued my interest and I'm toying with the idea of getting more into it. I've searched your channel but couldn't really find any answers to the questions I'm asking. I know there's a tons of other channels that probably address this, but I enjoy your no BS and honest approach. I appreciate that. You appreciate that. Was wondering if you've done or could do a video or two on gaming for beginners, like how to get started, best free games to try on Steam for those just starting. Do you use a mouse or keyboard or a controller for gameplay? What are some good controllers that work with Linux OSs? Native games versus Proton versus Lutrus versus Steam games. I've got more questions, but didn't want to hog the comment section. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate the comment and the compliment. So let's get into this particular topic. Now, choose a distro. I know that sounds really stupid and really simple. Here's the problem with me doing these. I'm very specific about how I like to help people. So I try to tailor distro recommendations solely based on the user. So I would need more information than what you have currently given. You're a beginner, so it depends on your hardware. So there's a lot of caveats to a lot of this stuff. If you are an AMD graphics card, I'm going to probably recommend a more rolling distribution like Manjaro. More because the improvements in the graphics card and whatnot are done in the open source nature. So a lot of that is rolled into the kernel and Mesa, which are the graphic layer and obviously the heart of the OS. Those are my recommendations for when it comes to AMD users, because you'll get most of the improvements when it comes to new kernels and Mesa. If you're a Nvidia user, pretty much any distro will work for you. Generically, most people will recommend PopOS. PopOS mostly because it has Steam and Lutrus and a lot of more end user friendly kind of stuff, either at least in the pop shop or already pre-installed for you. So PopOS or Manjaro. Manjaro has 3 different flavors. I believe it's GNOME, XFC, it's either XFC or Mate, and Plasma. That's more down to aesthetics and which one you like. So want to be very clear, I'm not using any of those. I'm using a Arch-based distro called Salient OS with a very alpha/beta desktop environment called The Desk. So if you see any of the stuff I'm doing, it's totally different from what you're probably going to be using. So choose your distro, use Etcher, download the ISO, use Etcher, burn it to a USB, boot from the USB. Now, if you have problems booting from the USB, probably disable secure boot. Not a big issue nowadays, but it potentially could be for some. That's going to be in your BIOS or your UEFI settings. Go in there, just look for the secure boot setting, disable. Log out of your UEFI boot, reboot, F12, F9, F8, escape, delete. It all depends on your manufacturer for whatever your boot options are. Select whatever image, select whatever drive your USB thumb drive is. Select that, it'll boot into that Linux distro that you just burned to it. Now there's 2 different ways to experience a Linux distro. Live USB to make sure your shit works. So there's that. And then there's just okay, it booted, I'm going right into it and installing it. That's up to you. I'm going to assume you're just going to nuke and pave and use it. So once you do that, the installers are pretty simple. Time zones, keyboard layouts, partitioning, most are pretty straightforward. Just use the guided ones or the entire disk if you're going to do it. I'm going to recommend that if you do have a dual boot setup, that you have a separate Linux drive and a separate insert other OS drive. As far as that, I don't generically like recommending booting off the dual booting off the same disk. That's just a personal thing. If you decide it, that's your choice. Once that's done, if you want and are running on Nvidia, if you use Pop! OS, you should see this thing, Nvidia X server settings. That needs to be installed. If not, go into, I believe it is restricted drivers, and just go in there and look for whatever the newest Nvidia supported drivers are in Pop! OS. Manjaro should have it installed by default on the pull down. Also, one other thing, when you're installing a distro, download the thing that says something about third parties, proprietary drivers or whatever. That way you have a better out of the box experience. Things like codecs and that kind of stuff get pulled down, and you can actually, watch YouTube or listen to music or MP3s or MP4s or whatever. Okay, so there's all that. Some distros pre-install Steam, others do not. Depends on your choice. I believe Manjaro has it pre-installed. If you do Manjaro because you're on AMD, you'll see Steam Native, Steam, and Steam Runtime. Steam Native uses the local, more up-to-date libraries. Steam Runtime is more static. It uses a set fixed library system that devs can target. That's really high level and really bare bones explanation of it, but I'm trying to keep this really simple. That's more of a personal flavor and personal taste. Sometimes you'll get better performance out of the Steam Native, but you could potentially run into games that would work on other ones but might not work for you. Or if they work with the Steam Runtime but they don't work with your local libraries. It all depends. So either or, your choice. Once that's done, Steam, if it's installed already, that's fine, but I want to give you that caveat. If you have issues downloading from the Pop Shop or insert software application, like in this case I use Add Remove, which is what our Pop Mac, which you'll find on Manjaro. This one, all you do is just simply start typing, and you type in Steam and it will pull in. Click on it, click the button that says install. It'll do what it's need. Input your password, let it do its thing, and then all you have to do is go back over here, type in Steam, and there you go. That's pretty self-explanatory. Once that's done, either create a Steam account, or if you have a Steam account, log into your Steam account. It'll pull down all the information it needs to. It'll pull down all the info for the client, which is about 250 megs, give or take. Once that's installed, relog into your account, because sometimes you have to, because Steam's a little weird. So I'm not sure if I actually have Steam up or not. Yeah, right here. So you'll get this. So in my case, let's go to my library. What you will generically want to see is this: show only games that run on Linux. Now, these are native titles, generically, not always, but generically they're native titles. If you want to try Windows games, like if you notice, like I have a few Windows games here that are Remember Me, Shining Force, Shining Resonance, Refrain, Tales of Berseria, Distortions, Edge of Eternity, Injustice, King of Fighters. All those are Windows games. So if you want to enable that, you just go to Settings, go to Steam Play, enable Steam Play for supported titles. There's about 50 titles that Valve quote unquote supports. They're whitelisted, as they would say. It's like Tekken 7, The Last Remnant, and a few other games. That's up to you. Generically, what most people will tell you is to enable Steam Play for all other titles. That will allow you to pretty much test any game that's in your library. And you'll usually want to use the most recent version of Steam of Proton. What people would sometimes tell you is, oh, use a different version of Proton. Well, luckily that's what this selection list is for, but what they mean is there are different branches of Proton to try. One's called Glorious Egg Roll, and there's probably 3 or 4 that are really worth trying. I have a video on explaining how to use custom versions of Proton that the community has made. So if you want that, just search for installing, I believe it's Glorious Egg Roll, or using custom versions of Proton. I don't remember how I actually labeled the thing. Once all that's quick though, you'll have to restart Steam. Just click OK, restart Steam, re-log in, etc. I'm trying to think of a game that I can actually install. Let's try Under Night and Birth. This is a fighting game. So as you can tell, this will be the typical way for a Windows install of a game. And what you want to do is just let it do its thing. And when it's done, it should automatically just run. Again, I can't 100% comment on that right now. So I want to get into Lutrus, but I want to give this a minute before it does its thing. The quick version on Lutrus is its own animal. Pros and cons to that. So one thing you will, I don't know if I actually have it up. One thing you'll notice, like I have the Epic game launcher. What Lutrus allows you to do is it's essentially community created scripts that allow you to run different games, applications, and in this case, game launchers, and use them to potentially play those games on those launchers. So like in Epic Games case, I actually have GTA 5 for free that you can play through Epic and launching through Epic, etc. So there's that. Let's get over to here. So these controls are going to be a little funky. Run games, as you can see. That particular game that's just more of a funky control issue. Back to Lutrus. So Lutrus is install scripts. The problem is with Lutrus, sometimes when, especially around these launchers, an update will brick these launchers so that you have to sometimes wait for the community to fix the install script. Pros and cons to that. So I don't think I have Lutrus currently on. So in this particular case, this is what Lutrus looks like. What you want to do, the nice little feature that they have added is this allows you to search the Lutrus database of their website for installers. So if you like want the Epic Game Store, you just type in Epic Games, and in this case, you go here, you click install. Any dependencies that it needs or other additional software, just another pop-up will say, hey, we need this. Just tell it to install whatever it needs. And there you go. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much Lutrus in a nutshell. I mean, you can get into like custom runners and all the other stuff, but that's Lutrus in and of itself. I'm not going to get too deep into that. So the other thing you wanted was game recommendations. Game recommendations when it comes to specifically Steam or like free-to-play games. Albion Online is one. Another one is going to be CSGO. Another one will be Team Fortress 2, Dota 2, Dota Underlords. There's a couple other ones. Most of those are native. If you want cheap games that are multiplayer, I would recommend there's one called Ballistic Overkill that a lot of people don't like. It depends on your flavor. For me, again, it all depends. So those are all native games, because something that I want to show is this little thing. Now, once you log into Steam and all that jazz, there's this great website called ProtonDB. 72% of games in the top 1,000 on Steam run either gold or higher. Gold is minimal configuration. Platinum is basically none at all. It's native as far as like how you have to quote unquote configure it. And the other 26% is all just native titles. So when you enable Proton and all of Proton for your library, you play like that top 1,000 games, you go from 260 games to 720. Something to keep in mind if you are a like battle royale player, PUBG, Rainbow Six, Destiny. Those kind of games aren't going to work on Linux right now, and that's not a Linux specific problem. Well, it's a Linux specific problem only because the easy anti-cheat stuff and that software doesn't work on Linux or detects Linux as a hack. That's a problem that BattlEye and those type of companies really need to get fixed. Looking at you, Epic. So ProtonDB. Then what you want to do is up here, it'll say sign in with Steam. Sign into your Steam account because it'll link this. And then you want to click on this by rating. The nice thing here, you can filter all this stuff. So like The Witcher 3 is platinum. This will give you all the ratings by how good they are. So like Tropico 4 is actually, you'll see these, it's whitelisted by Valve. Those are officially supported games. So really cool features, really nice to have. I use that constantly to check on my titles. So there's that. You've seen kind of what they run defaultly. Controller recommendations: PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Pro controllers, Wii U controller. Sorry, not Wii U. Wii controllers, Wiimotes, whatever you want to call them. Xbox One wireless controllers, etc. They all work. Generic Logitech, USB controllers work. Linux really has really good controller support. Wish Windows could say the same thing. I'm looking at you having the PS4 controllers on Windows. Generically, if you're using Steam, you really don't need to have much in the way of controller issues, because usually Valve will, or specifically Steam, will load the right kind of profile that it needs to. Like if you plug in a PS4 controller while you're using Steam, it'll tell you that it's using like a DualShock 4. There are other controllers like the Steam controllers that I have up there. Those are a little more finicky and a little more game specific, so you might actually have to configure those. But other than that, that's it for that. I'm not sure what else you really want as far as that. Native versus Proton versus Lutrus versus Steam games. Again, the quick version of that is native is native. Proton, there's always a performance hit, but even on some of the native games, there's a performance hit, so it really doesn't matter. Lutrus is just a outside of Steam kind of application, and Steam games are pretty self-explanatory. And again, the pro con thing with Lutrus is that it gives you a greatly expanded capability of running games, but it also, with that, there's no guarantee a lot of stuff's going to work, and if something does break, then there's the weight on the community to fix it. So yeah, short version on that. Other than that, personally for me, that's kind of the quick rundown of what all the gaming stuff on Linux is. I know this is kind of condensed and not really like game specific and all the other stuff, but I wanted to try to answer this as best and concise as possible. So hope that helps. If you want me to get like really more step by step, then we can, but I hope that helps. So I will catch you guys on the flip side.